So, um, so tonight I'd love to talk to you about leaders that last, really about learning about self-leadership in mission. Last week I was at the Catholic Parish Summit, which was a conference organized by Divine Innovation. And I was sort of invited to facilitate a panel discussion on the topic of self-leadership. And what I found interesting is that in the last year or two, the topic of self-leadership and how to run your race without burning out has been a lot on the things I've been working on. I've been asked a few times to be speaking on this topic, which I found at the beginning. I thought like, okay, does God want to send me a message? Like, is there something like a hidden message from God on things He want me to work? And I find it fascinating how God doesn't choose people who are particularly good at something to do it. There's something about not being particularly good at something where God really wants you to grow, or maybe there's really like this a space where God invites you to be and to engage with. So I don't think I'm particularly good at the topic about not burning out. I find myself many times in a situation where I feel it was like almost like running my race like a sprint, even though the race is a long marathon. And I found myself like running too fast, burning out. It could be like out of passion, but burning out many times. And therefore, I'm speaking about this topic not as an expert in terms of, oh, I'm doing it perfectly. I try things and then fall back again. So I'm speaking about the topic as someone probably like you, probably doing it even worse than you. But I'd love to share with you some of the things I've learned and what has been helping me really like to run the race without burning out, and how self-leadership is the foundation of being able to do so. And I'd love to start with a passage from Hebrew 12, which you probably know, but I feel like in this passage, it gives you like a recipe on how to do it. So I'm going to share that passage, and I will sort of point out a few things that are in this passage that I find myself like using to remind myself how to run the race well and how to lead myself. Start saying, therefore, since we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endures such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And I'm going to sort of stop on a few of those passages and say, what can we learn from that verse, and what is God telling us, and what is teaching us on how to run the race. The first one is, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And I think what I've learned, especially in the last few years, is what is not transformed is transferred. I've seen it in myself and in others, how if we're leading out of our brokenness, out of our wounds, our sin, our needs, if you're leading out of what you need, you're basically trying to fill yourself with something you don't have. So the difference, what happens is that you become basically a glass that needs to be filled. And everything you will do will be sort of focused on trying to fill that glass. And so all your concern, all your focus, everything you're trying to do would be focused on getting your glass full. And therefore there's an element of allowing God to heal parts of things. We all have things we carry. We all have brokenness in us. We all have blind spots. And so self-leadership is really having the courage actually to look into those and say, okay, I want to allow God to transform my wounds and really look into my blind spot and sin. And it's a process. I think sometimes we think like, oh, if I'm leading, or if I just have to sort of fix everything and be like perfect, and then I am able to do something. But that's not how God works. God is never expecting you to be perfect. He knows our brokenness, knows he knows we might have something we carry with us like a trauma, but God is not telling you, oh, once you have taken care of that, I'm going to sort of empower you and touch you to do things. No, he carries that with you, but he wants you to bring it to him, really, to bring those wounds and those situations to him, and be aware of it. So in some ways, it starts with knowing yourself to say, what am I carrying with me? What are maybe some needs or things that I need that are sort of influencing my motives. As part of my work, I work as a coach, so I'm coaching leaders. And one thing I've learned just recently is something called bioenergetics. So it comes from from psychology. So it's not directly personality, but things that sort of shape you in the first 5 years of your life. And I find it fascinating because I was like learning that. I found out that you can almost like recognize that in people, like even through the shape of their body. So our body sort of is saving information. So if you have experienced some sort of mini trauma when you have age 0 to 5, that influence your needs and what later on might be what drives you in everything you do. And I've learned basically that there's sort of 5 dualism or 5 needs, basic needs that people develop during this time. So that might be different for person to person. The first one is security, which is something we develop at the beginning of our lives. The second one is being noticed, being seen. The third one is power. The fourth one is being approved. And the fifth one is success. And it's interesting, I'm sure as I was telling you those 5, I thought, well, there's definitely one that I know about myself and resonates. That sort of we all have different drives and notice. And it's something we might carry with us. It could be also related to our personality. So maybe for one person, the need for security is higher, while for another person doesn't mean anything. That's definitely not what drives you. For another one, it could be power or success. But let's say if success it was drives you, what it means practically is that everything you will do will be trying to fill that need that you have deep inside. And if you're not aware that that's what is leading you, basically that's going to lead you in everything you do. So it's not about sort of finger pointing ourselves, saying, "Oh my God, like why do I have that in me? And how bad is that? And I shouldn't feel that I need power or I need security." But we do carry some of that within ourselves, and that's not the issue. The issue is when we are fully not aware, and then we act out of this unintentionality of not knowing what's happening within us. And for instance, for me, success is surely something very important, like within me. Like I know that when I do something, I do care about success, but realizing that means I can choose, and I can choose like not to fear failure if things are not happening as I want them to be. So I think what the shift that happened for me was realizing, well, okay, I might probably still have that within me. God sort of heals that on and on, but it is a process. And yet, because I'm aware, every time I feel a sense of failure or I feel maybe stressed that things are not happening as I want them to be, I can sort of choose to say, well, I know what that sort of need, but I choose like not to be led by that, and I choose sort of to accept. And it could be the same for everything else. So there's an element of knowing yourself, knowing what you're carrying within you, being aware, and then choosing like in freedom what you're going to do, and really allowing God to sort of keep working with you and healing. Don't feel like, oh, I have to fix myself. It's really an element of intentionally then behave and choose, because we have the freedom to choose. So it's really, it starts with being aware. What is your personal, what is within you? What are some of your motives and needs? And then not acting just out of them, being aware of them, but then also choosing maybe what it needs. So really letting God transforming us so that we're not transferring our own needs and motives in everything we do. The second point is from the passages, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And I would translate it like, don't give up God's dream for your life. Don't give up God's dream for your life. And so for me, like self-leadership means being aware of the direction of travel, be aware of, what has God put in your heart, in your purpose, what is the vision that God has for your life, and how does it sort of reflect what you carry within you as well. But also being aware that God is also saying, let us run with perseverance. Sometimes we doubt when we feel like, oh, things are hard or things are against us, we have been against, we feel, oh, maybe I might be wrong. I might be on the wrong path and I'm just going in the wrong way. But perseverance is actually saying, well, there's going to be some wind against, and you're going to sort of be resilient, push through. And sometimes that means just standing and not giving up. I once before I doubted that and thought that perseverance was always to fight against something. I thought, okay, if I have to persevere, I have to go like a warrior. I'm going to just sort of fight the fight. But I'm learning more and more how there are different two types of perseverance. There is the one about, pushing through and just like almost like that sort of looking forward and pushing through. But there's one which is about patient, is about standing still and was like not giving up, but without actively doing any step forward. So maybe like my perception of success failure was, well, if I'm persevering and if I want to succeed, I need to make steps forward. I need to sort of advance. Otherwise, it's failure. But I'm learning there was the perspective of that need. Being free of that, I'm learning more and more that perseverance means sometimes just not giving up and just sort of standing there and maybe having day where like, I'm still here, I'm still showing up, maybe showing up in prayer in the morning. Doesn't always feel like, oh, I feel like doing it, but there's an element of being committed, being faithful because God is faithful. So I interpret like with perseverance very much around faithfulness in the hardship, in the highs and in the lows, in the mountains, in the sort of in the peaks and in the lows, and say, I'm going to keep running with perseverance because I know there's a race marked out for me, and I don't want to give up God's dream for my life. And the other thing when we think about running is understanding why we're running, like what is the world, like the context where we're running. And I feel, the culture around us have changed a lot, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. And what I'm seeing, there are 4 things. The first one is like we live in a culture that is normalizing working 60 hours a week. We're normalizing the fact that we're busy. Like busyness is like accepted as just a way of being. I almost like feel some people like feel almost like guilty if they're not saying they're busy. Like almost it becomes the natural thing. I'm talking to sort of leaders and they're saying, well, working in corporate, saying, oh, my calendar is changing. I have more and more meetings at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. It's like because the calendar is so full, the only free times I have are 7 in the morning and 7 in the evening. And it's normalizing. Like it's like people just don't even ask you, is it okay to have a meeting at 7 p.m.? So it's like this is like the culture we're swimming. There's a normalization of this super busyness, speed, and just normalizing a 60 hours week. The second thing, we live in a culture of speed and immediacy and overabundance. I mean, if you want to go on holiday, for instance, if I think about maybe like 20, 30 years ago, flights maybe were not as cheap. There weren't like low cost flights. There wasn't Airbnb, and now you can, swap your flight and go somewhere. So basically, it's becoming more approachable, being able to do certain things, but the range is huge. Maybe before you said, well, the only option I have for the summer is going and using my auntie's house in Devon, and which was a great thing, but there was like, that's your option. And now it's like you have tons of options, and that's sort of pushing the burning out because of just having to make so many decisions every day and being overwhelmed by information and by options. So that's another thing that's influencing the culture we live in. We live in a culture of self-creation. And I even see myself, there's an element, with social media, it's like, okay, well, I am who I'm posting. I am who am I on social media. And if I don't, does it mean I'm not anymore? Like it becomes almost philosophical. Like, am I defining? Do I have to define myself? I must like self-create myself and portray myself to people through that. And it's a lot of pressure. Like it becomes almost like if I don't do that, like what are people think about me? And then like this intention, I'm like, okay, which kind of image I want to give about myself, which is still not the full reality. So even if we do it consciously, unconsciously, that's putting pressure. So that's the thing. And then the last one is the fear of difficulty. And I think it comes from us like this constantly searching for pleasure and feeling, if I feel hardship, it means I'm doing something wrong. Or if I feel bored, I'm doing something wrong. I'm almost like feeling, well, I don't really know how to deal with difficulties. So if I'm feeling, I just try to move away from that. So we're losing the ability to face difficulty and hardship, because the world is telling us, if you do, then you're doing something wrong. You're not living life as you should. And I think, and this again is very portrayed from the culture around us. So those 4 points are actually creating the culture you swim in. That's going to make it harder to run with perseverance, because basically we are living in a world that is going to consciously or unconsciously bring you to push you towards burnout, because it's the culture we live in. And therefore, like, my invitation is really to think about, if you look at with swimming that culture, how do you build rhythm of grace in the way you run with perseverance the race marked out for you? How do rhythm of grace look like for you? And rhythm of grace means just not being led by your calendar, not being led by what's happening around you. Because if you do, I just described the culture, if you do, that's going to lead you automatically to burnout. If you get yourself feeling, fear of missing out, I'm missing all this opportunity, there's so many things I could do. If you start being led by what's around you, that's going to lead you to burnout. And therefore, like, how can you bring like this rhythm of grace, rhythm of rest, without like overdoing it? Like, sort of work-life balance, I think, is probably the wrong word, because we're like thinking, I'm going to balance my work and my life. And for me, it's like, life should be everywhere. So it was like, say, okay, what is like stopping me to live a life to the full? If all my life is based and turned around work, and I don't really have time for the people I care about, why is that? Why am I doing it? And who is actually deciding that for me? So I was like, try to bring that rhythm, some Sabbath and some space for you, to be able to really like engage with with the world around you, where God has placed you. The third one is fixing our eyes on Jesus. And I guess it's just reminding yourself that he's worthy of everything, that leadership is hard, and life can be hard. And we come with all our imperfection, we come with all our situation, we come in a context which is not easy. And therefore, we need to remind ourselves that we need to fix our eyes on Jesus over and over again. He's worthy of everything. He's worthy of hardship. He's worthy of everything you're facing. And also, he's reminding you that you're not on your own. I have the tendency to rely a lot on my own strength. I feel like, if I work harder, if I do it harder, I'm gonna win the battle. So my tendency, again, selfish, my tendency would be that. But I know that there's invitations like to gaze and to look to him, and just really look at his gaze and letting him love me. There's something happening when you sort of fix your eyes on Jesus, and fix your eyes not just to be focused. I mean, there are two things. The one thing is happening is that as you fix your eyes on Jesus, you're sort of putting a focus, and you're less distracted from everything else happening. So from the culture, so like there's an element of like, okay, I'm going to look at you, and not going to let my time being fed with so many other things. But the other thing that happens if you fix your eyes on Jesus, that he's looking at you. So like there's like this is two ways. You look at him, you're being focused, you're like he's reminding you who you are. But then you have this loving gaze on you that renews you and heals you, and it heals you every day. So fixing your eyes on Jesus is not important just because of the focus and reminding you who you're doing things for, everything. But there's another thing of just receiving his love. And I don't think we spend enough time realizing that that's what God wants to do with us. I had a realization just a few weeks ago. I was thinking about purpose and really reflecting on my own purpose and what is the race God has sent for me, until I realized life becomes a dance with God, where God does everything just to be able to love us and to remind us how much he loves us. And there's sometimes we get like so stuck into the mission and everything, or like the purpose. Even like purpose is something very good. I'm passionate about finding your purpose and finding your why. But if we forget that in this whole journey of life, there's an element of, the beloved, and really God wanted to love you and be with you, and we lose sight again of what is the whole purpose of things. There's an element of losing sight of what is the end goal, or what is actually God trying to do in the journey. So I find, when we sort of follow God and follow His purpose, it feels like an adventure. It feels like, God takes you to places you never experienced. But there's something very special about an adventure, because the more you surrender yourself and trust God, the more God surprise you. And I had this situation where I thought, well, God, you didn't have to do this. You've given me already so much of your love. But then He does one small thing where He's like surprising you. You think like, wow, God, why did He do that? And it's doing it not just for you to fulfill your purpose, but He's doing it because He loves you so much that He wants you to know that you're loved. So fixing your eyes on Jesus to remind who you're doing things for and who are you giving your life to, but also to be really loved and really receive His gaze. And the last one is so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And I think there is really something, I really felt that even tonight, I was finished up with the talk, I really felt that on myself. I really felt like, just do not grow weary and lose heart. And I, as last minute, sort of realized I had also to lead worship, which I wasn't prepared. And I thought, should we just cancel the night and just like not do it? And I was literally there, like writing on this. I was like, God, like, why are you doing this? And I just realized how in that moment I was actually, being weary and losing heart. So as I was writing this sentence and I was losing heart myself, I realized it's okay sometimes to feel you're losing heart. The problem becomes when you make your feelings a reality about what you're experiencing. So the more like you let your feeling become your reality, the more you're getting away from seeing what God is doing in your life. So I think feelings are important. I think we need to sort of feel ourselves. We need to sort of look at our feeling. We have feelings for a reason. But I realized if I look at myself and I look at my week, I start noticing how if I would base my decision and my life based on my feelings, I don't know what my life would look like. So there's an element of was like seeing this sort of steady line, like a red line, which is God in your life, and having your feeling doing that up and downs, and I get excited. And I'm Italian, so maybe I'm more emotional. Maybe you don't have that. It's just my thing. But for me, it's like I have a day where maybe few things happen, and I feel like, oh, I'm losing heart. And I so tonight, as I was choosing like not to lose heart, God put like my eyes on this verse, which I'm just going to read to you. As it was really speaking to me, and it reminded me that as we run with perseverance the race marked out for us, if we lose heart and if we lose the reminding that God is there loving us, we lose everything. It says, therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. So what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. What is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. And this morning I chose a rhythm of grace. So I chose not to head back straight home. I had an hour before meeting, so I could have head back straight. I took the kids to school, and then I could have come home, work an hour, and then go to my meeting at 10. I thought, no, I'm just going to give that space to God. I'm going to intentionally give that space to God. So I went to sort of St. Margaret's, to the Marble Arch sort of park. It's a place where I like to go, like along the Thames, and I was there. And I was sort of listening to worship, and it was interesting. So God caught my attention looking at a bench. There was a bench there, and you see, like, those benches where there's like always someone sort of dedicating the bench to someone. This is for John, who loved sitting here. But I started noticing the few benches that were on my way. So they were quite specific one. The first one had something which was like to Robert, and they said from a poem said, "Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song," from Edward Spencer. And I was really caught by this "till I end my song." So there was something about the slowness of the Thames and the bench that someone might have sit it down there. And so I sat down there and I could see like the people running through and passing by, and they were like running probably just to get themselves fit. It's good to do sport, like, but there was a moment I could almost like see the emptiness of the running. I could see as I was sitting there and thinking about this sentence, "till I end my song." I could see like this emptying of the running. And I could just see almost like myself, how sometimes I just run empty. I just like run around, like, but like, why am I running? Where am I running to? Like, what is this all running about? So maybe there's a wrong interpretation of what let us run with perseverance. Maybe we interpret it as like just being, I just have to just run through. But there's something maybe about pausing and just being in those moments, allowing that rhythm, just to remind yourself who you are and how sort of the song of our life is going to look like. There was another bench. It was written to Vicky. "You were my life and you are my everything." Oh, I was like, and the first thought I had was about Wolfgang, and I sent him the picture, and I thought, well, I think I could write a bench with this for you. And he really like, and I was sitting there, I was really imagining this person being so fully clear about this love he had for Vicky, and just like was like perceived being part of their life for a second. And I think as I was there, I was like reminding of eternal life, how certain things in life are, and there will be, like he was saying something like, "You are my everything." It was probably talking about Vicky after she probably has died. But I love that he used the present tense. So there's really something about living our life, knowing that it's temporary, it's finite, and yet it also will be. So as we said, it will be like there's like a finite and an infinite on our lives. So yeah, I was just thinking, like, if we like really compare our lives and think about this bench, um, how are you running through your life? Are you running through your life like empty, like almost like just for the purpose of, yeah, making your body feel like, what are you really trying to do? Why are you doing that? While you're running your life thinking about this bench, I was really thinking, like, imagine my life, the end of my life, there being a big bench. And I was trying to imagine who are the people who are going to sit in that bench, and what is it going to be written on that bench if I have just one bench, and maybe there's just sort of one sentence that can be written because they cannot fill it with hundreds of them. So really thinking, how big will the bench be and what will be written on that bench. And so I really want to invite you now to just maybe pause for a couple of minutes and just really to ask God, what is the race you're being inviting me? How do you want me to run that race? And really just try to remind yourself that as we run with perseverance the race marked out for us, we should never lose sight to fix our eyes on Jesus. We should never lose sight who is God in our lives. And also we should never lose sight and grow weary to finish that race. He has a crown for us, and there's eternal life. But we should live our lives thinking, oh, what am I leaving behind, but also what am I carrying with me to the Father, as He will look at me and say, "Well done, you faithful servant." Amen. I'd love to give you just